Hello, I'd like to introduce you to Aiden. Aiden is kind of a class 3 mild open bite case that, again, was treated in a very simple fashion, only took 14 months from beginning to end. You know, this is one of those cases where when you look at the beginning, you look at the end, and then you see that it was done in 14 months, you know, you kind of scratch your head, at least I do, or I used to. Now we're starting to see this is pretty typical. But first off, Aiden was a highly motivated patient. He did a great job. Second, you know, there was some planning involved. And the last thing, which I think is really, really critical, is how the Damon Ultima System performs in these class 3s. You know, when you're going to run class 3 elastics, one of the biggest side effects that we used to have was retroclination of the lower incisors, or they ended up too upright. With the procline torque bracket, you know, protecting the torque on the lower incisors, and then using a retrocline bracket on the upper to make sure that we don't end up with proclined incisors, really truly makes these class 3s so much easier to treat than they ever were. And more importantly, when they're finished, they don't look like they started out as class 3s. So although we're camouflaging some skeletal problems, we don't see as much of that camouflage effect or that class 3 dental look that we used to achieve. So hopefully you enjoy this case. Aiden was fantastic and is a great example of the power of the Damon Ultima System. Thanks a lot. This is kind of fun because we're moving into some class 3s. Aiden came in and was just a great young man, had a lot of energy and motivation, and we were able to take care of most of his concerns in a pretty short period of time. You know, this is one of the greatest things, is to treat some of these complex problems in shorter periods of time with more predictability. So let's dive into Aiden's case. Again, we always start with the most important part, which is diagnosis and case setup. So we want to look at case planning and a setup. We're going to go through a comprehensive aesthetic diagnosis, talk about variable torques and where we place the brackets. So we can see in Aiden's initial records that, you know, he has some spacing in the upper and he has a little bit of spacing in the lower. He's edge to edge. He's kind of got a class 3 molar going on, lack of overjet overbite. I mean, this is not a case that is really fun when it walks in the door. But the cool part is with the technology that we're using now, they become really predictable as long as we have a patient who helps us out. So we look at his X-ray. The Panorex has really nothing really that's really too out of the norm. We see his wisdom teeth developing, and that'll be something we deal with later on. We look at his X-rays, and we can see that, you know, he's got some eminence of a class 3. He's got a little bit of a vertical component to him, you know. So we really want to make sure that we're really careful with this one. So he's class 3. He's got mild arch length discrepancy, and everything's looking really, really good. We want to make sure that we are up to smile arc and that we increase his buccal corridors, but we also know that he has space, so we're going to have to hold torque in the right spot, especially since we're doing class 3 mechanics. So since we know that we have upper space and we're going to have some sort of retraction, and we also know that he's going to be wearing class 3 elastics, which are going to cause proclination, we want to make sure that we prevent that class 3 look, and we want to prevent that inclined incisor and that retrocline lower incisor. So because of that, we're going to use a retrocline in the upper and we're going to use procline in the lower. As far as positioning, we pretty much always hit that FA point. The only caveat to that is in my class 3 cases. I typically have a bonding protocol where I put the upper incisors at 6, the upper laterals at 5.5, and the upper canines at 5.5. It's not because I'm trying to create smile arc. It's really because I'm trying to end up with 1 millimeter more overbite in class 3 cases. For me, it's just for a little bit more stability. Plus, you know, these kids don't have a lot of overbite to start with. So we want to make sure that we give them a little bit more when we finish. And that's why we put the lower incisors at 5 millimeters instead of 4.5. So you can see right here the bracket positioning. It looks really, really good. It's not too far off of the normal bonding, and our posterior brackets are bonded exactly the same as we bond in all cases. Again, posterior for function, anterior for aesthetics and overbite. So let's go ahead and see how this case treated out. You can see that we did treat this young man in a really great way from the start to the finish. It just looks really, really nice. And let's kind of tear into it and show how we took care of it. So we're going to go through just a highlight reel. We break this case down completely in our case files, but you know, the short intro version is that we started with an 014, we went to an 018, and then we went ahead into our 140275 copper nitite upper lower. Just 2 to 3 visits. We do start our class 3 cases with rubber bands exclusively right off the bat. I want to make sure that I take care of all those functional components that can cause some problems later on. So in his case, we went ahead and started class 3 elastics, just 2 ounce, 3/16. And here's where he is at the end of phase 1. I mean, if you look at this, phase 1 records are just looking amazing. Now we still have some space in the upper, so we're consolidating the upper 3 to 3 under the wire, which is what we do for all PSL. It's a nice light C chain. It's generation 2 wide, and it's stretched 3 to 3 so that I'm consolidating the alpha and beta space. Meanwhile, he's wearing his class 3 elastics from the lower 4 to the upper 6. So phase 2, we put our full dimension archwire in, which is the 180275. Continue our elastics, but we do up it to 3.5 ounces. And this is where we reposition anything that we need. So now you can see at the end of phase 2, we do have the spaces still isolated in the alpha beta. So this picture is taken at the end of phase 2 on his way out. So we had already changed his wires to our steel wires, and that's why you're seeing the retraction coils. So again, on our space closure, 125 gram, 12 millimeter light high coil springs we use from post to 6, and then we use elastics to back up if needed. So let's kind of look at that in phase 3. You can see again 180275 steel in the upper, 160275 steel in the lower. Around about 8 weeks before we debonded, I noticed that his upper incisors had a little bit of inclination forward, more than I'd liked. So I put in a 200275 9-tie, which is an overdrive wire. That overdrive wire gives us about 6 degrees of added retroclination because the 180275 is full expression. To get the 20 in, you have to rotate it 6 degrees to give that little bit of twist, and that uprights him a little bit. I set up the debond to make sure that I timed it perfectly. Again, I go through this in the full course, so it's just kind of trying to explain it here. So here he is the week before debond at the end of phase 3. We like everything. We're ready to go. A week later, he comes in because we checked all our boxes, and here's what he looks like. These pictures are taken a day after debond, 14 months, 9 appointments, and you can see what we did with his archwire sequence. Really just light class 3 elastics, great torque protection in these brackets, really just makes all the difference. If we look at his x-rays, everything looks really, really great. And again, this is what I'm seeing is that when I look at these lateral sets and I look at the inclination and in the positioning, I mean, I've just never seen this level of control in third order, as well as holding everything from a positional standpoint. You know, we're using natural arch forms, so his tongue finally got up in there a little bit. You can see that upper arch at 8.5 months looks really, really ideal. From there, we had to close space, so it comes back. And, you know, some class 3s you'll end up with a little bit less arch development because they always have a full lower just because of the way they've been positioned. And most class 3 patients keep their tongue low. So we want to make sure that it's really doing everything it can to get it up. So you'll usually not find a whole lot of arch changes in the lower. But when you look at his progressive smile, you can see right off of phase 1, we're able to get that overjet into a positive way. So now he can have that smile arc really dialing in. So at 14 months, you know, he went from, you know, a typical class 3, not much showing, to a beautiful class 1 with a really great face. Mini aesthetics look great. Micro aesthetics, again, super dialed in. When we look at this, you can see really, and it's funny, you can see that 200275 copper 9-tie in that upper arch because there's the stops on there. But it just shows you how cool it is that you can end without any bends in these cases. So you can go back and forth between wires if you have to. Again, if we look at his stats, 14 months, 9 visits, no arch wire bends. I mean, this is just beautiful when this happens in your clinic. We're able to treat this young man in a great way. And honestly, before cases like this, it was just a little bit more challenging to get him in this position. It took a lot longer. Again, if you really like kind of what you're seeing, check us out. You could follow us on our socials. We're always posting cases like this. So I hope you like this case, and good luck.